Hi, I'm Veronica Harrison. I'm Todd Harrison's daughter. He runs the website toddfun.com. In this video, we're going to show you how to make the gumball machine / candy dispenser machine. To make this, it requires minimal tools and minimal material. And over here, we'll check out the materials to make it. Alright, so this gumball machine is the one that my dad made back in his school days. Back in his shop class, it has, more fancy cuts, it has different kinds of wood. It took a shop class to build it. And so, I really liked it, but I really wanted something simple that I could make with how little tool. We don't exactly have a lot of woodworking tools in our shop. So I made something, I kind of changed up the design so it would be easier for me to make. Alright, so for the design, I went out and got 2.5 by 3/4 inch redwood oak. And then I just cut it to length for the middle upright sections. The two outside pieces will be cut about 2 inches on either side, but then the middle piece will be cut shorter for room for this longer extension, this dowel piece that holds the candy in it. Alright, now for the top pieces, I did something similar with the uprights, and I got stock 3.5 by 3/4 cut red oak, and then I just cut it to length here, and then they just cut them one for the top, one for the bottom, and then you sandwich them on top of the 3 pieces on the uprights to make the corridor for the candy puller. Now the candy mechanism works by pulling on this 3/4 by 3/4 inch square stick dowel, and when you pull it out, there's a nice piece of candy on the inside. So what we're going to do is we're going to cut out a peg out of the inside of the dowel, and we're also going to bevel a small circle to hold the candy so it doesn't go rolling away. And then little pieces of cut small dowels on either side keeps you from pulling the dowel all the way out, or pushing the dowel all the way in on either side. Alright, so for the jar part of the candy dispenser, I just use standard canning jars, ball canning jars. They come in 6-packs. These are a pint size. You only need this top inner ring, so you can actually throw this part away. This part will be screwed down to the top of the candy dispenser with some standard wood screws. You gotta make sure that they're flat topped, because if they're round beveled edges, you're not gonna be able to screw your jar down. So make sure they're flat wood screws. And then also with the ball jars, you can choose different colors. I used white last time just for clear and simple, but this time I want to go a little green and festive, so I got green jars. You can also get blue, I know those exist. But you can get those at any standard shopping place or any place that does canning, like Walmart or Fry's or places like that. Alright, now for the part where the candy drops from the jar onto the dispenser, you actually have to drill a hole through the top part. So let's flip this over. I'll show you that. Alright, first set of greases. I'll show you that the candy rests neatly on the inside, and then gently you can pull it out and the candy will fall out so you can hold it. Just like that. See? Alright, for the hole, we used a 2-inch hole saw. Cuts the hole nice and neat, and it's about the same size as the standard ring lids for the canning jars. So we cut the hole in the stock wood before we assemble all the pieces, of course. Then we use the canning lid, and we'll screw it down to the top using those screws I showed you earlier. Alright, so this is enough materials here to build 4 of these simple to make candy dispensers. I have 6 jars, but they just come in packs of 6, but I only want to make 4. They're simple to make, they're fun to make, and they're great gift ideas for the holidays or birthdays or whatever. This is my spec drawing, so my dimensions with all my measurements and my supply list up here. I'll put a link to this at toddfun.com in the descriptions below. Alright, to finish off your gumball / candy dispenser, you're going to have to finish it. So you can use a simple block sander like this, or you can use a machine sander, whatever you got. Something simple. The simplest we got is just a hand block sander. And then also after you sand it, you need to varnish it and finish it off. So I like to use this 2-in-1 stain and varnish together, or you can do the stain and then the varnish, whatever you want to do. You just stain and varnish to your liking. Alright, now I'm going to show you how to go ahead and make the gumball machine candy dispenser. Some of it will be in detail and the other parts will be in 10x sped up. Alright, now that we have all the pieces cut out, I'll show you how to sand all the pieces, and then after sanding we can go ahead and assemble. Alright, now remember everything I did in the last part you can do with a simple hand saw. I just like the Meyer saw because we have one and it makes life easy. Just like this part, you can do it with a simple hand block, but we have the redneck saw or sander thing. And it works, so I'm going to use it. It's great. So basically we have a belt sander mounted upside down in a vise, and I just turn it on, and then I'm just going to hold these on here and sand all the parts. Make sure you always sand with the grain. With the bases and the tops, I'm going to round the edges slightly so it gives it a nice soft look. You want to pick a top. The top is going to have soft edges on the top. The bottom you're going to leave alone. It's going to be still square so it can sit and it's not going to rock or tilt or whatever. Okay, now that we've finished the sanding, we're going to assemble the center upright portions of the candy dispenser. I'm going to use a brad nail gun because I have access to it and it's simple to use. You could also wood glue everything by assembling them in a jig like this and then just getting wood glue in between everything. Okay, now the first thing you want to do after sanding all your pieces is you want to assemble them just so you know that the tops here aren't really flush with the tops. You want just a little bit of a gap so that this arm can slide smoothly in and out when the tops are nailed down or glued down later. What you can do is you just take the centerpiece and you can just shave off a little with the saw you have, or you can just take the sander and vigorously sand the tops so you have a little more of a gap between the arms and the top of the candy dispenser. Okay, after checking all my pieces and sanding the pieces down that needed to get a little touch up, I just put the center uprights here in this little jig, and then I'm just going to take my brad nailer and just pop a couple nails into each corner. That way it's solidly in and it's never going to come apart. Okay, now that the nails are in, you can take it out of the jig. And its center uprights are constructed, and they're not coming apart. Let's do the rest of them. Okay, once the nailing or the gluing is done, you can go ahead and touch it up again with a sander. Get any lips that are showing, you want to get them all flush, just to make it aesthetically nice. If you're using a nail gun, and if you have a particularly crappy nail gun like I do, you go ahead and tap in the nails if they're showing up like that. I have to get a hammer and just kind of tap them in flush so they're not sticking up so much. For the next part, we need to drill a hole into the center of the tops so the candy can drop from the jar into the arm. Easiest way to do this is first you gotta find the center. So I just get a ruler of any sort and I measure from corner to corner, corner to corner, and then after that you'll have a center point and you want to drill in that center point. I use a 2-inch hole saw. I have a drill press, so I'll be using that. But for simple ways to do it, if you don't have a drill press, you could take like a big sacrificial piece of wood, and you can take other pieces of just pieces of wood you don't need, and you can nail them down onto that piece of wood with your block in the center. I just use 3 different blocks. And then one so you can slide it out when you're done. And it'll just have enough room where this isn't going to spin out on you and go places. And you want the wood underneath so that when you drill a hole, it doesn't go into the table you're drilling on. And if you don't want to do that, or don't have some extra wood, or if you have a clamp, you can use a clamp. Just make sure that when you do it, you have 2 pieces of wood on the inside, so you're not pressing into the nice wood you just sat and sanded forever, and you're not putting press marks onto the sides of it. So now I'll show you how I go about drilling a hole into the tops of my candy dispensers. Okay, now just like the press solution to doing this, you also need something to hold the wood down while you're drill pressing it. So I have this little rig, and then I have my little pieces of soft wood that's not going to damage my nice sanded tops. Gotta clamp it down nice and tight so it's not going anywhere. And I have these poor man screws to keep it from going places. Okay. Measure to make sure you're in the center of your dot that you measured. Alright, now that I have 4 cut tops, we're going to move on to assembly of the tops and bottoms onto the candy dispenser. Drew the little candy holdy spot just by tracing it, but you can do it on your own. Just leave a little bit here so it doesn't break. It's going to be about 1 inch or less, just to hold, just big enough to hold a piece of candy or a gumball in there. I found these little knobs you can get at like Home Depot or Michael's or any convenient or any woodworking store like that. And I'm gonna assemble them on the front, and those are gonna be big enough where this isn't gonna fall through in the front part. They actually come pre-drilled with a hole in the back. So I'm going to, I found this little dowel that fits on the inside. I'm just gonna stuff that in. I'm gonna cut this a little long. I'm gonna drill a hole about the same size in the front. I'm gonna wood glue this, and I'm just gonna have that wood glued into the front like so. That'll be nice. Okay, so I'm gonna use a miter saw to cut this inner portion out. I'm just gonna cut one side, cut the other, and then kind of just cut along the way. It'll be a little bumpy, but then I'll take a wood chisel and make it nice and smooth, and then I'll sand it a little, be also smooth. If you don't have a miter saw, you can just you can clamp it down, like I showed you earlier, and you can just saw down one side, saw on the other side, and then cut that piece in half, and then cut that in half, and continuously do that until you have little slivers. Then you take a wood chisel those off, and then chisel it smooth, and then sand it, and it's the same way to do it, but it's a little more difficult. You just want to be careful. You might want to clamp it on both sides, because this will be the weak point. If you're sawing too hard, too vigorously, that'll snap, and you're going to have to cut another middle piece. So I'll go ahead and show you how I do it with a miter saw. It came out pretty well. I took the blade and went from here and just skimmed the tops all the way across, and that actually made a pretty smooth surface. Alright, 3 more to do. Alright, if I didn't mention it earlier, I'm mentioning it now, or I'm mentioning it again. This is the steps where you need to be the most careful, because you now have a weak point in your slider arm. I mean, it's still sturdy, but it's going to be weaker than it is when it's a solid chunk of wood. I'm now going to show you how to make the small indentation on the inside. It's harder to see. This is where the candy will rest so it doesn't roll off. I'm going to use a really large bit, because I'm going to go really wide with it, but I'm not going to drill very shallow. It's just going to barely be dented in so the candy won't roll around. Alright, so now drilling the hole for the back dowel. Back here, I'm gonna make the hole just slightly smaller than the dowel is, just to make it really snug. I'll tap it in with a hammer so it's snug, and also put some wood glue in there. It's just never gonna come out. About right there and about midway in. Alright, now I'll show you drilling the hole for the front where the little dowel will go, where the handle will insert and rest. So you know which the front is. Like I did with the centers of the top pieces, I drew X's on the front just so I know where the center is. I'm going to use this drill bit that's just slightly smaller than the dowel, so it'll be snug with some wood glue. Again, remember, it's important to drill very straight in or your handle is going to be crooked or tilted in some way or fashion. Alright, then I stuck a dowel on this end. I'm going to stuff it into the hole I just drilled. Perfect. Alright, so I cut a bunch of dowels about an inch long. I'm going to coat them in wood glue, and then I'm just going to stuff them into here, and then stuff them into the fronts of all of these. Alright, now we got the 4 slider arms with handles. Let's put the wood glue in, plus the handle. You want to make sure you go around and clean any excess wood glue that squeezes out in between the cracks when you snug up the 2 pieces. Alright, just like I did with the front piece with those dowels, I'm going to take these larger dowels that I cut, coat them in glue, and stuff them in the holes I drilled in the back. Again, make sure to go around the edges with a paper towel so you can clean up the extra glue that squeezes out the sides. Okay, once you have all the pieces together, for the most part, no tops or bottoms, we're gonna stain. Stuff you're gonna need your stain. Last time I did this, I did the stain varnish combo, and it worked out great, but this time I want to see if I can just stain and varnish separately. I want to see if I can accomplish that. I'm not very good with woodwork, so try something new. So you need stain, and then you need your polyurethane finishing. This stain, I'm going to use a brush to apply the stain in the direction of the wood. I'm going to let it sit for about 10 to 15 minutes, and then after that I'm going to wipe it off, and then I'm going to let it sit for 4 to 6 hours. Some utensils besides the stain and urethane you're going to need, something to open the cans with, you're going to need a brush. I like to work with gloves so I don't get any stain on my hands. My stain is oil based, so I need some paint thinner to clean my brush. Paper towels to wipe the stain off. So, now that I'm staining, I'm going to go on to the varnish. Also, another tip is, I use redwood for all of these, and those stain great, but I used pine for my other pieces. Some of my pine came out staining well, but other ones just didn't stain quite as nicely as the redwood did. So if you can find some pegs about, this size with redwood, they stain better, go ahead and use that because that just looks nicer. Where the dowels go, you should sand those areas nice and neat, right? And get all the glue off you can, because wherever the glue touches, the stain won't get into those areas, won't get into the grains of that part of the wood. So make sure you sand that down and get as much glue as you can off of that. What I'm going to do with this, instead of brad nailing it in, I'm going to drill holes in the bottoms, and then I'm going to tack in some finishing nails, so then everything's all straight and square. I did the first one just proof of concept to make sure it worked. To do this, I used balsa wood. I cut a piece of balsa wood out in the shape of the bottom, then I lined up the uprights where I wanted them to go on my bottom part, outlined it, and then put little dots where I wanted to drill holes, so I knew that it was on the inside and it wasn't going to be sticking out too close to the edges. And then I use this as a template for my drilling. So. Alright, now that I got the holes drilled, I'm going to tack these nails in just so they barely poke out of the top. And then I'll place the upright, push it down, and then finish tacking it in. Alright, so when you do this, you want just barely some poking out. These are all good. Make sure everything's aligned straight. Make sure it's exactly where you want it to be. Take some time on this part because this is permanent. Alright, now that all the bottoms are assembled, we now need to assemble the tops. We're doing the same thing that we did with the tops, or with the bottoms. Going to use the template, except for this time, going to draw a circle on the inside so you know where the circle is. Then you're going to draw a square, so you know, you're going to put this on there, and you're going to draw a square. So you know where the square to circle is, so you can guess, you just kind of place the holes somewhere within the square and the circle. Alright, did my first one, drilled the holes and tacked the nails in just to make sure everything went well. This is where you've got to be careful because you have like this much room to get the nail right so it doesn't splinter the sides and it doesn't go in the hole and splinter the inside here. So be very careful on this part. At this point also, when you're putting it in, make sure you, like if you have a square, this would be a good time to just make sure you have it all squared up when you're doing it. Alright, now for the tedious task of assembling the tops. Again, make sure that your slider arm is in there. Alright, these nails, the top finishing nails, are also very important to sink them more than flush, like get them a little deeper in under the wood. Okay, now on to lid assembly. I did the first one to make sure I knew what I was doing. What I'm going to do is I'm just going to go, there's like about middle of the inside of the lip, and just dimple the inside on either side here and here. And then once there's holes there, I'm going to put it on here, line it up, and then just take this and just mark the 2 spots, and then I'm going to drill a hole and then put some screws in. So I'll show you how that works. Alright, for the drill on this one, for drilling in the screw holes, you want the bit to be slightly smaller than the screw you're using. Alright, now for attaching the lid to the candy machine, I do it by hand because you don't want to use a drill. If you did, you might end up splitting the oak top just because it's so close to the inner circle here. So, do it by hand. Now time for the easiest part of the assembly. Put the candy in the jar and screw the jar onto the candy machine. These parts you don't need, so you can discard those. Alright, here's first, second, and third generation candy machines. My dad made, I made, and I made these 4. And that's how you fully assemble a wooden glass jar candy machine. Check out toddfun.com for a full description, as well as a printout of the PDF for the blueprints for these. Also check out toddfun.com to see the rest of my dad's videos, and I hope everybody has a happy holiday.